Jonathan.
Ooh. Okay, so first off, is Professor Nelson Levy here?
Yeah, he is.
Hey, how you doing? Okay, so what you all don't realize is that there was an after dark session, and it was a very fascinating after dark session. There is a watershed that we can't go past, so I can't tell you everything that we discussed, but we started off with neuroscience and ended up with Dr. Dre, which was fascinating. And it was a good zeitgeist for some of the things throughout the day. The day started off really well for me because, is Mandar here as well?
Mandar? He's not in the room now.
Oh, he's meditating.
He's still trying to make bail.
Okay. So
He was with you, huh?
there was a pre-kin session which was about meditation and mindfulness and emotions. And one of the things that Professor Levy rightly pointed out was that when we talk about reflection or introspection, what about extrospection as well? You know, so I started to think about this whole. You know, most of today and yesterday has been dealing with egos, right? There was the Kellogg thing about having low egos that the Kenyan students were saying, and Mandar spoke about controlling your ego, and asked people what that actually means. Now, I don't want to bore people to death with Freud or anything like that, but I think that it's interesting because we're now at a stage when kin's been going for a while, and remember, you know, previous years there's been change at scale, and there's been growth for good. And these are really good, powerful macro messages. But then after you've sent out those macro messages, then the reality hits, which is, well, how do you actually operationalize those things? How do you make them happen? And, you know, I've been to enough conferences over the past 12 months, and one of the buzzwords is authenticity. And we heard about authenticity here. Now, the challenge for a kin gathering is authenticity as a kind of throwaway term or a buzzword isn't enough, because the next question is, well, what does authenticity mean? Yeah. Now, I could argue that anything is authentic, but that doesn't necessarily resonate, right? You could be a pain in the backside and be authentically a pain in the backside, right? You could be resistant to change and authentically resistant to change. So I started to think that it's not just about authenticity, but it's about the surroundings and the environment, which is why I think kin is so powerful, because you're having to evaluate who you are and then also what the reality of your surroundings is. So there is an element of both, and I mentioned this in our After Dark debate, truth and reality are really important, which is why I would reject some of the conferences that you go to where they ask you to be pumped up and ask you to kind of accentuate an attribute that you might not even possess. Yeah. And I think Mando was very good at setting a scenario where he was asking us to do what? To be critical, and also to be supportive, and also to learn how to ignore. These were three things that we had to learn how to do. And in any other circumstance, you can't imagine that in leadership training, you'd be taught how to be critical, to learn how to ignore, to practice ignoring, and then to practice to be supportive. They seem to go against the grain. Where I might kind of agree to disagree is that he spoke about positive and negative emotions. So anger, he did deal with, and he spoke about negative states. And I would kind of reframe that in saying that there are emotions, and we should learn how to understand the reality and truthfulness of those emotions and get the blend right. So for me, authenticity or compassion or collaboration, all of these things center around us as individuals, understanding ourselves very well, but also growing to understand the reality of our surroundings very well. And I think that that's, in some respects, fairly straightforward, right? You've got 30 seconds, you can get your smartphone out, you've got smart thumbs, and you can have a really smart mind in 30 seconds. But the reality of the situation is that, you know, and there was talk of some of the markets and entrepreneurs in different sectors. You can't substitute expertise, hands-on, on-the-ground expertise, doing the air miles. And I think, you know, we've met at enough conferences, and those real experiences of treading in somebody else's footsteps, putting your fingerprints on artifacts in different countries, and sharing, you know, laughter, tears, and all of those experiences with people is really important. And the challenge for us is, because we heard yesterday, right, what goes on in Miami never happened, yeah. Right? Okay. Well, we can't have that happen here, right? We have to think about how we can distill these experiences and how we can take them outside of this amazing 2.5-day event, and take them into our workplace. And I think that becomes the big challenge, that you have to know ourselves, we have to reboot ourselves, and we have to try and give people that kind of nugget of information. Because I'm not going to see Ted for another few months unless I can convince you to come to Jakarta or something like that. And so I don't want this to be another situation where in 12 months' time we're sat, I've got a different coloured pair of trousers on, a different coloured pair of shoes, and I'm saying the same thing: authenticity, change, innovation, entrepreneurs, young people of the future, millennials, because they start to become not even mantras, they just become sound bites.
Authenticity becomes inauthentic.
Right.
Right.
Ooh.
The
Ted,
philosophical paradox.
By the way, thank you, Jonathan. That was great. A couple thoughts. I want to ask the other panelists to talk for a second about this face-to-face digital thing, because it's something we all confront. And Jonathan, you think about it a lot in your work. And a quick shout out to IDM, which is our social media partner. They've been distributed throughout the program, doing tweeting, helping support it, because we've never really tried to tell our story. I mean, the kin has never really tried to tell our story that much. We just kind of get together, we do our stuff, and it's wonderful and it's lovely, but we're trying to reach out more.
I don't know that I have an answer for it, but we can't live with it, we can't live without it.
Yeah, great.
I think it's blending slow and fast culture. There is something very real-time and fun and instantaneous about tweeting. And even I realized that I liked somebody's tweet who was just one seat away from me. I was like, oh my God, I recognize you. Oh, I just liked your tweet, right? You know who you are. Now, I think that side is really important. I'm glad that Kin's taken it on board, because we're in a moment here. And the short, fast cultural aspect of this is that you're not going to care so much about each other in a few days' time. As much as you want to, you're going to disappear and you're going to go back to your families and to your work. And the tweet or the social media footprint or the selfie, I've now discovered that if you take a selfie with somebody, if you email them, they don't delete your email. And they feel compelled to reply because you've taken a picture, you've got their face and your face in a photograph. So, I want to try and get another couple hundred selfies before the end of the day. That'd be quite good, right? But there's something quite beautiful about the aspect of social media. The long tail aspect is that you could send a tweet and then a year, 2 years later, somebody says, I saw that moment that you said that thing, and it could lead to an amazing opportunity. And I'm fascinated, especially in emerging markets, at the long tail aspect of real-time communication. There you go.
Now I'm going to tweet it.
So it's really, because that's the legacy. I mean, you can see that I burnt a bit of skin tweeting, right? Social media team, I kept you liking, right? Nothing but love, okay. So I tried really hard to be like one of my students just for a couple of days, then I can go and disappear again. But I think it's really important now, because the reality is that there is an art to storytelling, but storytelling has to go on different platforms in different lengths of time, different tones, and it resonates in different ways. And so I've had to learn how to be, pithy in 140 characters or 20 pages or,
And the whole dimensionality of storytelling, communication, and connection has changed markedly in the past decade. There are multiple additional dimensions.
Jonathan and I have all kinds of fun. We're on LinkedIn. We're like, hey, did you see this? But I look forward to, in fact, I brought you a T-shirt. You pinged me the other day. And so I brought you a T-shirt. And I physically am going to give this to him because it's fun. We're just doing that. But it's just so much more valuable.
I didn't get a T-shirt. I didn't get a T-shirt.
But I guess as well, so it's the one thing on face-to-face, but if you look at the markets like, Saudi Arabia and Indonesia, right? In the top 10 tweeting nations, as Indonesia's got 2 cities. You've got 250 million people, 17,000 islands. Is it Yogyakarta and Jakarta or Bandung or something? Mm-hmm. And then in Saudi Arabia, there's Riyadh and there's another place. There are places that you wouldn't...
Jeddah.
Yeah, and Jeddah as well. You wouldn't think that Saudi Arabia and Indonesia would be Twitter crazy. And there are interesting, I spoke to one blogger who's a designer as well, and she has like 4 million followers on Instagram. And one of the behavioral changes that I noticed was, I said, how do you get 45,000 likes when you just, switch on a light or something? And whatever she does, she gets 45,000 likes. She says, because I send I upload my picture just after sunset prayer. So people pray, so the behavioral changes, people pray, and then they check their phone.
That's how I do it.
You heard it here.
That's changing scale. Well, that's it. Don't you? As opposed to, well, I mean, as opposed to sending work emails
Great.
when you're on the toilet, right?
So, Toby, one more comment, and then I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you a comment opportunity, Toby, but I'm going to give a question that I want the other three to think about while you're responding, pontificating, and that is, it's our last question. You haven't been prepped for this, but to what should kin aspire? To what should kin aspire in the future? Okay, and I want you to do it in 3 words. Jonathan.
Cool. 3 words. Reduce unconscious bias.
Reduce unconscious. Well, how can I do that? I'm unconscious.
Nelson could tell you after 9 p.m. though.
But it involves swearing.
But no, I
like that.
biases. If you're interested in innovation or entrepreneurship or doing new things or figuring out the future, as we all must be, then biases need to be something that's on our mind on a regular basis. So why don't we talk about that and integrate a segment of some sort next year about biases, and maybe it's an interactive segment. It's not just somebody speaking about it.
I guess you don't know. I mean, a lot of time you don't know unless you actually do the air miles, or unless you put yourself outside your comfort zone. You've always spoken about, not going to the same people asking for the same advice.
Right.
And so I've learned a lot from going outside of my comfort zone to different areas, and then thinking, my goodness, but I didn't realize that I had, a disposition towards this or that. And I think helping people that would help, because it's the soft skills. I mean, the big problems we know. There are no elephants in the room. The reality is that people are what get in the way of of change and scale and all these things. It's not technology. It's not it's people, and it tends to be these little sticking points that prevent somebody from going the extra mile, from making that connection. Let's
talk about a segment for next year.